Hello there, this is Dr. Dell again, and I want to now tell you this is Uncle Jack video 4, and in the first videos we have learned how he taught me to count up through 99. And if you need to review those if you've forgotten them or if you haven't watched them. Now, at this point in time, what Uncle Jack did then, he went back and he made sure that I knew how to do the addition tables all the way through 9 plus 9. So for example, he would say, okay, what is 7 plus 8? We'd have our piles here, 7 and 8, and I'd have to add them up and figure out, oh, well, that was a 10, 5, or in other words, what we call 15. And of course, we use flashcards too, and you have to memorize that. So basically, you end up have to memorizing, you have to understand, but also you have to memorize your addition tables all the way up through 9 plus 9, which is 18. And so that's the next thing he taught me to do, make sure that I could do that. And that wasn't very hard to do. It just took a little bit of time and practice. And I had a decent memory. And with flashcards and using the things I've already taught you, that was easy to understand and learn. Now, what I'm going to tell you is something that Uncle Jack, of course, did not do because he couldn't do it back in those years. But I'm a great believer that today when you teach a young child, you should also begin to use tools early, and I'm thinking in particular the calculator. Now, we use in our more advanced training, starting with Tier 1, the TI-30XA. You certainly, it's about a $10 calculator, and for a young child, I just go buy a $1 calculator because all you need are the basic functions for a young child, and get a nice calculator with big keys. I don't happen to have one, so I'm going to go ahead and use the 30XA, but what I do with really very young children, even when I'm just beginning to teach them now, when they get to the point where they need to understand the numerals and they're learning to count, I teach them, I get a calculator because here you go, you have 0, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And this is a way they can learn, and then of course I have them press the keys, there's a 1, there's a 2, there's a 3, again, watch up there. And they begin to play with it and learn how to count. Just basic, really in the very beginning of that. Now, once we've done that, as I told you in the very first lesson, we start teaching them how to add small numbers. So we've used in the Cheerio lessons, we would say, okay, what is 2 added to 4? And with the Cheerios, they would look at it and figure out, well, it's 6. And then the calculator would show them that it's 6. I'd teach them how to press the 2. Then how to press the plus sign, that means add, how to press the next digit 4, and then how the equal sign will give them the answer. This is the answer key. And so now a child can use this in place of flashcards, for example. I can say, okay, what is 3 plus 5? And then that'd be like a flashcard asking what's 3 plus 5. And then they can say, well, I don't know. They can either try to figure it out, use Cheerios. Sometimes, of course, they use their fingers to count. Ultimately, they got to remember that it is 8. And now, of course, as they've learned now, when they begin to learn the place system, they learn 10, 11, 12, 13, or as I like to say, 10, 1, 10, 2, 10, 3, then they can begin to also test themselves on that. So they can take like 8, and what is 8 plus 6? Well, of course, they have to remember eventually that it is 14. And so they can actually use the calculator to drill themselves and play, or you can play games with them on it too. But basically, they start learning addition with the calculator. And they can also learn subtraction. Even back in the first Cheerio lesson, if you took 8, and if you subtracted 2 away from it, and this minus sign now is take away or minus, or subtract, whatever language you want to teach them at this point. So you hit the minus sign and hit 2, and what would that be? If you took 8 and took away 2, what would you end up with? Well, of course, then they are going to learn and soon learn that it is 6. So I began to use the calculator with a very, very young child because this way they can, first of all, this is a tool that they're going to start using throughout their life. Remember, our children today aren't like I was growing up in World War II. They have tools today. And one of the very easiest to teach them to begin with is a calculator. So I'm going to urge you to certainly do that. Now, after Uncle Jack taught me how to add the single digits, and I memorized them, then he began to teach me how to add multiple digits, 2 digits. So if I 3, 4, and I knew that was 3 tens 4, I knew that was 34, and let's say I want to add that to 50, 2. And he taught me how to do that. He said, well, what you do is you add up the cents first. Well, what's 4 plus 2? Well, I know my addition. That's 6. Then you add up the tens. What's 3 plus 5? Well, I know that is an 8. So the answer is going to be 86. Now, that's about the easiest way you can learn to add. You're not going to do this with your fingers, and you're not going to do it with Cheerios, and you're not going to do it one at a time. You're going to have to learn. This is what's called an algorithm. It's a method of doing it. Now, then he would teach me, okay, what if you had 34 and you wanted to add it to 57? Well, 4 plus 7, I know now, is 10-1, or it's 11. But I think of it as 10-1. So he said, well, you don't want to put 11 down here because you only want to put something from 0 to 9. So 11 is 10-1. So if I subtract 10 from that, I'm left with 1. But now I've got an extra 10 to put up here. And so now I'm going to add these up. Well, I know 1 plus 3 is 4, and then I know 4 plus 5 is 9. And there you are. Now, he taught me that, and in a minute we'll get to what did he do when this was greater than 9 and we had to carry over. We'll talk about that in a minute. But he started giving me a lot of addition problems. And then again, I would urge you to take a calculator with your child and let them check it with a calculator. So if you want to know what is 27, and you want to add that to 68, then the 27, 68, well, this is 15, we know that. And now that is 10 plus 5, so that gives me an extra 1, and I carry that, I get 3, 6, and I get 9, and you hit the equal sign, and sure enough, you get 95. Now, I'm a great believer that children should learn to do this manually in their head, but also use the calculator to check it. Now, a lot of people don't like to use the calculator. They think, well, that's a crutch, and then the kids will never learn to do it manually. Well, that depends on how you teach them, and how you motivate them, and how you reward them. And so, I think that learning to use the calculator as both a learning tool and a tool to check your work is fine. And I must say this, it is true that eventually, if I ask you to add 63 to 98, even though you can do it manually, you're going to get a calculator and you're going to say 161. I haven't talked what that is yet. We'll talk about that next now. But start using the calculator with a child as long as teaching them the meaning of the numbers and what they stand for. Okay, now where we left off the last lesson, Uncle Jack had taught me how to count up to 90, and then 91, 92, 93, out to 99. Now I went ahead and represented 99 here. That is 9 tens and 9 ones. In terms of money, that's 9 cents and 9 dimes. So 9 tens and 9 ones. And the question is, what comes next? Well, if I add another 1 to this, then I've got another dime. So then I've got 10 dimes. So how am I going to express that? Well, the good news is, what Uncle Jack then taught me is, the government had done a wonderful thing. They now have replaced or made equivalent to these 10 dimes a piece of paper money. This is called a greenback. It's a $1 bill. And this is equivalent to these 10 dimes. And now the way we're going to express that, it's the same as 100 ones. And so we're going to express that as a 1, 0, 0. We're going to put a 1 over here, and we're going to make a third place to put the 100. So now we've got, this is for ones, this is for tens, and this is for 100. And the 100, in the case of money, is represented by a $1 bill. So instead of carrying a whole bunch of dimes with you, if you want to spend money, all you got to do is take some very light pieces of paper. And hopefully it's not counterfeit, it's real, and then you can go spend it, and anybody, any store that you go to will accept this instead of 10 dimes or 100 pennies. In fact, to be honest about it, a lot of stores, if you took them in 100 pennies, would be very angry. They wouldn't want to take 100 pennies. It takes too long to count them. In fact, they might not even want to take 10 dimes. They'd probably do that, but they would prefer to have $1, and that's expressed as a 100. And that's called 100. Now, the good news is, from this point forward, it's very easy. What's the next number? Well, you just start counting over. It's 101, and then it's 102, and and then it's 103. And you continue that process until you get all the way up to 199. So you've got to count up to 199. Now, at that point, when you add one more cent, that gives you an extra dime, and that gives you another 100. So what's the next number going to be? One more one is going to give you another 10. And that 10 with this 9 gives you another 100, so you're going to go to 200. That's the place system. This is the third place. So this is the ones place, the tens place, and the hundreds place. And of course, you continue this process. Then you count up, and when you get to 299, you'll go to 300. And when you get to 399, you'll go to 400. And that will continue till you get up to 999. And guess what happens when you get to 999? Well, you then get what is called 1,000. And that then becomes 1000. And this is called thousand. So you got 1, 10, 100, and 1,000. And that's the way that works. And so we were talking about cents here. So as a matter of fact, when you get up to 1,000 cents, that's the same as $10. And then, as you know, the government now has a $10 bill, so you don't have to have 10 of these ones. You can have a $10 bill. And that's what Uncle Jack taught me. And when you count this way, then it's a small step now to go forward to count really to an indefinite number of places you want to count. And of course, we learned to add larger numbers. Let's say 329 added to 464. Now do it manually. Here's an algorithm. You start with the cents column. What's 9 plus 4? Well, that's 13 ones. But we know 13 ones is the same as 3 ones and a 10. So we put a 1 up here for that extra 10. And now we add those up. 1, 2, and 6 makes 9. There's nothing to carry because we didn't exceed 9. And then 3 and 4 is 7. And there you have it. 793 is the answer. And of course, you always want to check yourself with a calculator. In fact, today, if you work for somebody, they won't let you do it manually. They'll make you use a tool because it takes way too long to do it manually and it's error prone. But let's see if I can get the calculator here. So we got 329. So you hit 329, and you hit the plus sign. And what did I say? 464. 464. And you hit the equal sign, which is the answer key, the answer sign. And it's 793, and if I didn't make a mistake, it was 793. So it's good to teach a student how to do it manually, particularly for these simple algorithms. Now, I will tell you later on, there are algorithms that are so difficult to learn manually that you'll want to immediately go to a calculator and forget the manual algorithm. I don't believe that's true with addition. So I think with addition, you're going to be fine to learn to do it manually, and I think it helps you understand the number system so much better. But I still think it's good to learn to use the calculator to check it. And ultimately, you're going to use the calculator anyway because a lot of the things you're going to do are just going to be too complicated to do with a manual technique. Okay, now this is about the limit of what Uncle Jack told me, up to 1,000,000. This is the units. This is the tens place, the hundreds place. This is the thousands place, the 10,000s place, the 100,000, and finally the millions place. So let's say you have a number, 7345982, and we put commas in here for a reason. We would come out here and say this is 7 million, and then we would say this is 347,000, and then we would say and 982. So this is how the number system works, and you know that. You've taught this, I'm sure, yourself. And this was about the limit of what Uncle Jack then actually taught me how to count. I could count up to 1,000,000 without too much trouble. I didn't have time, I never did it, but I could have theoretically done it. Now, this is not something Uncle Jack taught me. In fact, I don't think he probably ever thought of it this way at all. I doubt if he knew what the word exponent was. But another way to look at that, and this you want to teach your, when they get older, is that this 2 is times 10 to the 0 power. 10 to the 0 power is 1. And then this 8 is times 10 to the first power. So there'd be 8 times 10, that's 80. And then this 9 is times 10 to the second power. 10 squared is 100. So So this is 9 times 10 squared. That's 900. 10 cubed is 1,000. So 7 times 1,000. 10 to the fourth is 10,000. That's 4 times 10 to the fourth. 3 times 10 to the fifth. And finally, a million is 10 to the sixth power. And so that's a 1 with 6 zeros. Now, once you teach students exponents, which you can now do the next step, then you would go the next step to teach them this. But this is consistent with everything Uncle Jack taught me. And indeed, I was way beyond elementary school before I learned this representation of numbers. I don't remember when I first learned it, but I was probably well into high school and probably actually into college back when I finally learned this exponential representation of numbers. And of course, this lets you just go on and on and on indefinitely. So this is Dr. Dell. The next lesson, I'm going to tell you some things Uncle Jack told me about geometry that were very enlightening and very interesting, and I think you'll find it very entertaining.